So I made a poll and 30% of the people said they could bench 315. And I said there's no way 30% of you guys could actually bench 315. And they all start sending in their videos, and it turns out they're all liars. It's one of three things. They have elbow wraps on, they're slamming the bar to their chest, or they're just hip thrusting, or a combination of all three.
He makes a good point, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Is bench inflation a real thing, or is this all a hoax? Or is 315 the actual new 225? So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video, and without wasting your time any further, let's get straight into it. So he makes some pretty valid good points, right? Most people nowadays are saying, oh man, bench inflation is a real thing, right? And bench inflation just meaning you're seeing a lot of people repping PRs that used to seem otherworldly like 3 to 2 years ago. And I can't agree with that, right? I've seen some crazy things on social media, and social media has plastered my feed with just the top 1%. But we also got to look at through a different scope, right? A lot of people are saying, man, teenagers nowadays are really bench pressing 315, or when you have a 16 through 18-year-old saying, yeah, I could easily bench press more than 315. And then you see, like, you ask a video, or, you know, like, just proof, visual evidence of them actually bench press 315, and these kids are like doing what the dude said in the video, hip thrusting the fuck out of it. They're using their chest as a trampoline, and then they're wearing elbow wraps, right? And I actually was kind of curious because I've seen a lot of people wearing elbow wraps, and obviously they're not allowed in most federations. They're not allowed in any federations unless it's equipped, because they add weight to your bench press. And I was kind of curious because I was like, okay, how much weight do they add to your bench press? You know, exactly. So this is what I saw. I know beginner level was like, what, 0 to 10 pounds or 5 to 10 pounds. Intermediate was about 15. And then like elite was about 25. And I'm wondering, how do they really judge off that? Like, just experience on using the elbow wraps, which I guess can, you know, add to how much weight you can bench press if you've been using them for that long. And it's weird too, because you have a lot of, you know, influencers actually promoting elbow wraps, which is probably gonna, you know, be help accumulate to influx of these 16-year-olds bench pressing crazy numbers, right? The first thing that comes to mind is Larry Wheels, right? Larry Wheels is one of the biggest strength training, just powerlifting hybrid dudes out there. I mean, I used to watch him when I was younger, and I still kind of watch him, right? You might see me just looking up some Larry Wheels edits. And kids nowadays still look up to him because he is a monster, right? I kind of look up to him still too. But he is an athlete that you have to take advice with like a grain of salt, right? This dude is enhanced to the gills. And I used to listen to what he used to say, right? When he would say, when I deadlift, I like to just rip and grip, right? And that's what I did for the most part until it didn't work anymore, right? And when I say you take his like advice for a grain of salt, is probably because this dude's enhanced as fuck, right? He's way stronger than you. He can recover faster than you, and his muscles will adapt faster than you. Why? Because he's on performance enhancing drugs and you're not. So that's when I learned, okay, I probably shouldn't take everything this man says, you know, seriously. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids nowadays are, right? He's marketing these elbow wraps, and it's usually to a younger audience. And this younger audience are going to take those elbow wraps, and they are going to assume that their bench press is valid when it's not, right? A lot of federations aren't, you know, going to use or let you use your elbow wraps unless you're an equipped powerlifting federation. And even then, like, your bench press doesn't really count if it's not really you lifting it. And again, like he said earlier in the video, right? You're fucking bench pressing it off your chest. You're using your chest as a trampoline, or your ass is 30 inches off the fucking bench, right? We're gonna take this video for an example. Hey, you know what? He actually might bench properly. Oh, fucking good Lord almighty, never mind. Jesus. Right? Horrid form, just abhorrent form. And even with that horrible form and that, you know, the use of elbow wraps, he barely got the 315 up, right? And as a 16-year-old, right, I know I would as a 16-year-old, I'm still gonna claim like, yeah, I fucking bench pressed 3 plates. Yeah, that was all me. No, it wasn't, dude. That was not all you. And even though that you were there doing it, like, you couldn't even do it with all that assistance, right? That's why a lot of people are trying to say like, oh, and bench inflation is real. And my thought on that when it comes to bench inflation being real is, I'm down in the middle, right? Middle, yes, people are getting stronger. And one of the biggest reasons why is we have an abundance of information now, right? You have sources for fucking like learning how to actually strength train properly. We have more information than a lot of people who used to strength train back in the 90s or something like that, right? We just have more technology. We have an abundance of information that is just given to us, which is really cool. That's how I got stronger, right? I looked up, people, like how did they get stronger? What was their bench press protocol and stuff like that? And it really helps out. And then there's other stuff too, like there's actual exercises instead of like, as people like you could relate if you were older, there was exercises where you just went in and you actually just did shit, right? And we didn't know like 2 years later it was just a waste of time, right? So yeah, I 100% agree. Yes, people do get stronger and people have gotten stronger. And this is what's pushing a lot of these numbers up a little bit more, right? Like you're seeing people repping out PRs that were pretty wild back then compared to like 2 to 3 years ago, shit, maybe even 7 years ago, right? I remember the whole craze for 225 during 2023, the time I got under a bench and bench press 225 like it was nothing. But again, that's like my body weight. I'm going off a tangent, right? But I do think the inflation of bench is semi-valid because people are 100% getting stronger. But you also got to think too, a lot of these kids or these top 1%ers you're seeing are exactly that on Instagram. Top 1%ers. These people are either very genetically gifted, very strong, and they're just easily adaptable when it comes to strength training. But you also got to think about performance enhancing drugs, right? And stuff like that. But also getting to the middle part where I'm like, bench inflation really isn't that real. Like it still is, but it's not as big as people like assume it to be. Is because of kids like this who are bench pressing like that, like they bench press, like they're not even really performing a bench press, dude. They're just doing a hip thrust, chest thrust, fucking 3,000, right? Not an actual bench press. No one's counting that. If you even like respect the sport of powerlifting or strength training or just anything, you're not going to be counting that, right? And I want to show you, right, what an actual 315 bench press looks like, using me as an example. All right, let's see how fast this 315 moves. Right, you can see that 315, nice, slow and control, and then boom, I explode up. My ass isn't off the bench. I'm using my pure, raw, unfiltered strength to bench press this amount of weight. And again, this takes time, right? 315 pounds is a serious amount of weight. Like statistically speaking, this is how impressive it is. You're a top 1% bencher, especially compared to the general population. I want you to understand, like, you walk in a room filled with like 50,000 people, you are the strongest person in there, like statistically speaking, when it comes to bench press. Yes, that's how impressive a 315-pound bench press is. Probably even more than 50,000, because again, it's a top 1% compared to the general population. There's people who trained 5 years, if not more, and they've yet to get to a 315-pound bench press. And that's no shame or shade on them. It's just the fact that how impressive 315 actually is, right? So that's what we're getting back to. The conclusion is, like, is bench press inflation actually real? And I'm gonna have to go with 50-50. Yes, people are getting stronger. Yes, people are significantly improving on their bench press numbers. And yes, the PR and the goal milestone is like slowly going up. But is it as insane or as drastic as you may have like presumed it to be like beforehand? Probably not, because most of these kids aren't actually bench pressing this amount of weight. Even if we remove like the wraps and the fucking all of that other shit, you got to also think too, a lot of these kids are probably hopping on performance enhancing drugs too, because unfortunately, not only has elbow wraps been pushed onto the younger community, so has drugs, right? I'm thinking like Larry Wheels, as someone who's like a big influencer, who's like popularized performance enhancing drugs, even though he hasn't done it directly. He's indirectly, promoting it just because of how strong he is, how like insane his lifts are. I mean, he even says he felt like a god. Obviously, kids are gonna be like, I want to feel like a god. And then another influencer that comes to mind is gonna have to be fucking Toji, right? This dude, I enjoy his content, but he is a problematic person. But I'm going to be wrapping today's video up. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. What do you guys think? How do you feel about, this video? And do you think bench press inflation is a real thing? Leave it down in the comment section below, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Fuck. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you.